India's education system is not really relevant today because it's not in tandem with the job market.
There are large numbers of subjects which the lecturing part of the university life is now irrelevant.
The anger on the streets is also about all these people who have graduate degrees and no jobs.
English honors. What is the skill? Artificial intelligence system can, knowledge of language. An LLM can do much better than any human being.
We pay income tax on our salaries, capital gains tax on investments, GST on products, toll taxes on travel, and yet India is overtaxed. Is it normal for a developing economy?
Okay, let's lower the tax rates, which I'm always in favor of as a taxpayer. But then tell us, what exactly is it that you want me to cut back on?
Large populations, are they an economic advantage or not?
There are parts of the country like Kerala, like Andhra Pradesh. Interestingly, Bengal, where birth rates are very far below the replacement rate. In these states, they will have to accept migrants from other parts of the country.
When are you sailing next? Where are you sailing next?
In the end, I'm not attempting to just rebuild an economy. I'm trying to rebuild a civilization.
This episode is powered by Delta Exchange, India's leading crypto exchange. Namaste, Jai Hind. You're watching or listening to another edition of the NR podcast with Smita Prakash. My guest today is author, historian, and economist Sanjeev Sanyal. He's a member of the Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister of India. Sanjeev Sanyal is not just a government economist, he's one of India's most prolific thinkers on economics, history, and civilisational issues. Whether it's growth, urbanization, climate change, or India's place in the world, he's rarely shied away from challenging conventional wisdom. Thank you, Sanjeev, for coming on the podcast. Looking forward to this conversation. Last, when you were here, you were about to set sail. And then you had this successful voyage, and I've heard all your podcasts after that about the experience. I've heard you on stage at the Raisina talking about that experience too. So we'll get to that towards the end of the podcast. But I have to begin with the news, of course, about the youth protests with the paper leak and the education system. I can well understand that you don't want to speak about probably the protest as in the protest and the street anger. But what is the way forward for our youth as per, what you think should happen to the education system? Do you think that the NEP is enough? Is it anger against the NEP or is it just NET? What do you think?
No, I think there is a lot of things that need to be done about the education system. And in some ways, we have to understand that the NEP was written in a pre-AI world. So in some ways, we need to now begin to enhance it and move on. There are some very good things in the NEP, but we do need to realize that the world we are now entering already is a very different one from the one in which the NEP was written. So first of all, let's just talk about the NET issue. Don't forget what the world was like before it existed. It was a world of multiple exams with capitation fees and so on. So let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. The whole reason you wanted this is to create a standardized system where you take one exam in that space and hopefully young men and women can prove themselves in that field. Now, I understand that any single exam that you create will have its own issues. And I'm not getting into whether about how the exam should be run and so on. Of course, there's no excuse for having paper leaks and so on. We are fixing that. But let's go back one step back to the whole theory of why we have them at all. The system was a riddled and complex system that was clearly, even in the earlier system, extremely leaky. It's the same thing with GST. Right? You can complain all you want about, the GST system should work better. But to say that the NEET system is not an improvement on the previous system is simply missing the point. After all, what is the other system? So yes, we need to make this one work, but let's not let the debate be about how to make it work rather than about, NEET is a bad system. I'm sorry, the alternatives are much, much worse.
Okay, it needs tweaking.
Yes, we need to do. There can be
Yeah.
other things. I mean,
there can be remedial measures. that
absolutely,
can
and
be taken.
there's a whole committee now that's been set
Yeah.
up, so I can't speak for them. But there are options, and others have spoken about it, and I can speak about some of them. You can have this exam multiple times a year. That's one thing people have talked about. It could be done much more purely or much more using an online type system with a question bank that gets randomly thrown up at the person taking the examinee. And so, there are various ways. Technology is one way of doing it.
Sure.
The other thing that we need to also think about is how do we stretch this out? For example, there's other things that are happening at the same time. So one is fixing the current system using this. But I have in other occasions talked about the fact that we are now entering a world where the way of providing tertiary education may itself fundamentally change.
Hold the thought. I will come to you on the larger picture. But this article came out where Pallavi Iyer talks about China and India and the entire examination machinery in China. And she says that there is extraordinary attention to getting it right. And China realizes that you can't go wrong. There's a Gaokao method of examination where, and nobody objects to it. They've already had a street protest earlier in 1989 over grievances over this system. They got the system corrected, and then they have this meticulous way of doing it where everything, even the place where it's printed, she gets into the details, and she says, even the place where it's printed, the wastage and the garbage, even that is, made
So
sure.
I think, first of all, just as a matter of history, the system of using, nationwide exams as a means of recruitment is essentially a Chinese invention. They have been doing this for thousands of years. We actually adopted it during the British period for the civil service exam, in fact, from the old Mandarin system of China. So they do have a very long history in this. And my own view on this, as far as India is concerned, yes, we do need to have, a good, well-oiled machine. There are obviously the integrity of the examination system itself, which is how the questions are set, making sure that those questions are not leaked, and of course the taking of the exam and making sure that the results are commensurate to what the what the performance of the student is. So
because she says that the exam papers travel and are stored in like state secrets. GPS tracked vehicles, police escort, teachers.
So that could be done. And as I said, we may not need to do it quite in that way because, as I said, there is now technological ways of making it.
No, but make sure that there's no cheating.
Absolutely,
and it's not just neat. It's every exam.
And that's why I'm saying I agree. And we used to have major problem with cheating. We still do in some places.
Yeah.
But UP used to have a serious cheating problem.
Bihar and UP.
Then there used to be problems with examiners and how they mark them. So there was a whole bunch of things. And by the way, we are making changes. And in transition, there will be some problems. But for example, the CBSE thing, making the whole thing, providing the mark sheets online in this particular way is a huge progress in terms of transparency of how the whole thing works.
And not just once, not being examined just once. In case
there is a problem,
you have a headache, you have,
so getting
illness,
this,
you can do it the
absolutely.
same.
Getting the exam system right is absolutely critical. There's many things to be learned from the Chinese, but the Americans also run the SAT GRE system. So there is many things to learn, and I'm not making any excuse about whether or not to get this has to be got right. I think it's an important
the thing. SATs do have issue. I want to bring this when
any system will have issues.
Will have issues.
So point of the matter is, can you run this as well as is reasonably possible and try and keep improving them? Now, there is, by the way, a side issue which is not a part of the exam system itself, which also needs to be a part of this conversation, which is the system of coaching classes. Because much of the subversion of this system, by the way, even in China, used to happen by the coaching classes there. You should read about how they cut down on the, cracked down on the coaching class system.
By improving the public school system.
Not just that, they have cracked down directly on the coaching class system. And in any case, whether they do it or not, The fact of the matter is the way our system works, and a lot of the deliberate subversion of our system, which is done by this what I would in fact even go fast to call the mafia, needs to be properly looked into.
Okay. So when Pallavi's article came and this India-China comparison came, Shashi Shekhar, he says that running the planet's only billion people democracy has neither a parallel in geography nor a precedent in history. Those who want China-style economic opportunity with Western European-style liberalism need to ponder on this. Do we have to choose between one and the other?
No, not in. I don't think in this particular space. No, because this is not about personal rights and freedoms and so on. This is about running an exam system. It's a system that the Chinese do a good job of. There are many other countries in the world who do a good job of. If there's something that we can learn from the Chinese, we should.
And historically, you said that they cracked down on the coaching.
They have cracked down
mafia.
on coaching systems. And in any case, even if the Chinese didn't, so what? We have a problem. We should do something about it.
There is also anger among the youth. What I'm getting to is about a study which has come out by the Azim Premji University, which says that 1.1 crore, which is 11 million graduates aged between 20 to 29 were unemployed in 2023. Out of that, roughly 6.3 graduates in that age group, they are angry because they don't have jobs. So I just want to know from you that, the anger on the streets is also about all these people who have graduate degrees and no jobs. How do you see this?
Obviously, India has had for a while, and by the way, many countries have this, people in their 20s doing various things and being effectively unemployed in some fashion, either because they are preparing for exams, as happens very often in India. If you ask people what they do, they'll tell you we are aspirants. They're usually preparing for UPSC or something like that. Now, is that unemployment? I would argue not. I mean, this is clearly an optional thing that they are doing. Similarly, there is also other forms of this. People, for example, doing things that they may be doing on the side, for example, gig type jobs. So it is not the case that everybody who sort of gets classified as per that report is actually unemployed in that sense. They are doing something and they are doing it voluntarily. Now, having said that, there is one issue that is a significant thing that we need to pay attention to, which is that it is the case that a lot of the graduates that come out of our system come out not adequately trained in the area where jobs are being generated. Because just like you stated this, I can also tell you, if you talk to companies, even large companies, but also particularly SMEs and so on, they will tell you they actually have a shortage of people, that they can't seem to be able to hire enough people with the right kind of mix of skills, but also the right kind of motivation to work. So we have on one hand a economic system, industries, etc., who will tell you that they are actually unable to hire the right kind of people, and people like Azim Premji saying that they are unable to, that there are people who can't find the jobs. So there is clearly a rather than an unemployment problem, there is an employability problem that needs to be thought about rather seriously. Now, in this context, let me say that I think we do need to begin to take our education system and direct it much more clearly towards careers, jobs, and skills than we have in the past. A lot of the problems comes in liberal arts degrees and so on, which do not give skills which are any longer usable. And this, by the way, happens for many reasons, but one of the major reasons is there is a serious social problem and cultural problem about what we consider to be actually employable skills and how we accept certain kinds of skills, for example, vocational skills, as being actually an education.
They're not considered quality jobs. So you come out with a sociology major, you don't want to become a foreman in a factory.
So in fact, let me take your exact example. Let us say there is a young man who went at 18 to work in a factory. And by the time that 18-year-old becomes 28, has worked for 10 years on the factory floor in, let's say, a Maruti or Hyundai or something. 10 years later, probably is a reasonably senior person in that
Mid-manager,
system.
yes.
Yeah. Earns a good salary. Probably has very high skills in terms, probably is fixing robots and doing pretty complex job. And has good prospects because he's now in the cutting edge of that field. As it becomes even more robots and other things come in, he will probably do well. Now, let us say this same person now goes into the marriage market, okay, and let's say the person he wants to marry, let's say his girlfriend, is a sociology major from, say, St. Stephen's College. I can assure you that the family of the girl will think that she is marrying down.
Yes.
Whereas it is not at all the case. If you look at the skill levels of the two people, I mean, English honors, what is the skill? Now, that skill is completely an artificial intelligence system knowledge of language. An LLM can do much better than any human being.
But even the skill job, for example, you spend 3 years, say, selling food or driving a car, an app-based thing you're driving. And for 3 years, you're doing that. Maybe you've paid back your student loan by doing that. But even economists say they don't classify that as a kind of a secure and productive employment.
So I think here we have to get a little away from it. What is secure and productive? I don't think any economist would be able to even remotely be able to tell you what is secure and productive. Is a bureaucrat's job productive, or it is secure usually?
For middle class growth, you need secure
so the
and
question
productive.
I'm making is, what do you mean by productive? Is the person who is driving your car not productive? I mean, I don't know. I mean, the point I'm making is I don't think any economist would have ever told you about secure and productive jobs being a aim of any society. What a good society is a society where the labor market is fluid. And the economist's view of a good labor market is not one of secure and so-called productive jobs. What is productive is who knows. But whether or not the labor market is fluid and is able to keep adjusting to the new requirements of the system. So that is what is, for an economist, a good labor market.
So what you're saying is that India's education system is not really relevant today because it is not, it's not in tandem with the job market.
First of all, forget the education system. I think there's a cultural
Entire
problem
culture.
here. Then comes the fact of the education system. Now, the education system is largely set up for doing lecturing. And by the way, for viewers, I'm talking here only of the tertiary system so that we keep the argument tractable. The old system of giving lectures is now gone to a large extent. You can listen to lecture on any subject you want from the top experts online. AI can ask you questions to understand your comprehension. There is no reason really to go to a class to do this. Now, of course, there are certain skills which you still need to learn. I certainly want my surgeons to have gone and dissected cadavers and understood how to do this. But there are large numbers of subjects which the lecturing part of the university life is now irrelevant. People should be able to do it at home and then go to university. My own view is universities will ultimately have to transform themselves into essentially places where you do the following things. One is you basically do the practical, experiential part of your education. 2, they expand knowledge, i.e. research. 3, they do testing capabilities and certification. Hence, the earlier discussion on testing is an important one. Now, this is what they should be doing. Now, when you unpack away just this as being what you need to do, and you unpack it away from the lecturing and the need for scheduling classes and all of this, it allows you to create a much more open and fluid system of tertiary education. For example, for large proportion of people, they should be able to go to work at 18 and be able to do their course on the side. And by the way, many people do it already. You ask commerce students, for example, they do the chartered accountancy on the side. They are going to work. They are doing apprenticeships. This should be actually the way much of education should happen. You should basically at 18 begin to do some kind of work. Now you will say, where are the jobs? But I'm telling you that if we create an experiential way of going about doing this, those 4 years that are being spent in university don't need, the people will already be sliding in to the job market.
Yeah. But if employers are again in step with that.
No, so this is where, as I said, there has to be a wider conversation with the employer.
With the
employers. And there are some of the world's top employers are already shifting onto this.
Yeah.
So whether it's Elon Musk in the West or Sridhar Vembu here, there is no question in my mind that you can begin to deploy 18-year-olds into the workforce and they can enhance their skills along the way.
Sometimes it happens. Like nobody used to think about work from home, right? Employers did not encourage it, did not agree with it, did not use that. And COVID made us rethink on that. Mr. Nageshwaran was on the podcast and he had said that, we have to respect blue collar jobs. You have said also that era of that old MBA style of functioning, that and your lectures, that is over. I had Ronnie Screwvala on the podcast and he said that we have to look at no collar jobs now. We can't categorize this like this, that this is a blue collar job, white collar job. And we need to move away from that. And he was talking about the China model also, that we have to look beyond that at the stage of teaching, training and job market. Explain to me, how does an employer prepare for it? How does a student prepare for this? How do coaching centers, schools, colleges, universities, how does everybody prepare for it together as a team or alag-alag?
I think, first of all, as I said, economics, politics, all of these things are ultimately downstream of culture. This is true even in this space. We have to, first of all, begin to get into this. There is no such thing as blue collar, white collar, and all of this kind of thing. My own view is never was. But today, certainly, in the way things are evolving, this is going to be a meaningless way of thinking about things. So ultimately, what will happen is, I can see that in 10, 15 years' time, it will be routine to begin to work at 18. By the way, for most of human history, people used to begin working by 18. It's only in the 20th century that a sizable proportion of the population began to going to university. Before that, people were working, even people doing elite jobs used to work by the time they were 18.
But that's in Western countries, right?
Even here, people would be working in the farms or working in in the factories, etc. It is
but all
completely
employers
common.
Ask you to sign up and say that you're not neither taking an exam nor are you. So where is that?
So this is exactly the point I'm making. You've got to begin to get out of this. The employers need to get out of this. The education system needs to get out of it. And that's why I said culture is very important. It's a wider problem. Do you, at ANI, ask people to sign up that they're not doing any courses?
That they are not taking, if they are taking the civil services exam, they need to be there at work. They can't do this, that I've got this exam, so I'm taking a month off.
No. So
those kind of things have to happen.
Yeah, but you cannot. Do you stop them from taking other courses?
No.
You don't, right?
No, in fact, we encourage it.
Exactly.
Because if you're doing a language or if you're doing a...
But would you take on an 18-year-old into your thing if it just happens to be talented?
Oh, yes.
Then
absolutely.
Fine, you're already part of the way down the path.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So that should happen much more so. But by the way, the government itself doesn't take people in. So this is something that the government needs to do. The large corporations need to do. And by the way, one of the reasons we went down this path in the first place has got to do with how the 20th century industrial systems were set up. You have to understand how we ended up here in order to understand how the system is breaking down. Till well into the 20th century, it was very common for people to join a company as an apprentice and work their way up. By the way, the railways used to do this.
Sure.
So you joined it and then you could even become the chairman of the railway board but having started in the system. Of course, the armed forces, of course, function in this fashion even today because they didn't change things.
Yeah.
So how did we end up with this? And I'll tell you how we ended up here. We ended up here because of the following problem. We basically went down the path of Fordist factories, first of all. And so basically we divided up the process into parts. And after a few iterations, what happened is that you basically ended up with large numbers of boxes in which people were doing their job. Okay. In addition to this, a huge number of labor, all kinds of labor laws, etc., began to be piled on through the course of the 20th century onto what companies had to do for compliance. So the combination of these two meant that earlier what used to happen is like one unit of the production chain would hire its own people and didn't have to care about all these rules and regulations and so on. Now you got large corporations doing and, with all these laws to look after. So something called the HR department was invented.
Oh.
Now the HR department initially was no problem because most people from the field, so few of them were put into the HR department. Or over a period of time, that became basically a job in its own right.
Yeah.
Now the people in the HR department have no idea what is needed on the shop floor. So what did they do? They began to essentially use the degrees as a proxy for skill because they themselves are in no position of telling you what are the actual skills people. Okay. So this is how you ended up with this system of credentialism. Now, what I'm trying to tell you, that system is breaking down.
I agree.
Because there are multiple things that are happening. AI itself is breaking it down. You're getting all kinds of new companies that are emerging. You look at, some of the world's largest companies are all currently run by people who started as startups. Google, Alphabet, Meta, etc. will happen here as well at some point. The largest companies, when you have the people on the ground, they will hire themselves. And yes, the rules and regulations will also evolve in order to allow for this new environment.
I'm going to come back to this later in the conversation because I think it tops more than the economy that we're going to talk. I'm going to come to this, what you had tweeted about your visit to IIT Chennai. You travel a lot in the country, meet with young people during the course of, your interactions with regard to your job as well as, being a historian. You wear so many hats. Tell me about this. When you you said I had 3 amazing days at IIT Madras. The place is the most interesting intellectual cluster in India right now. Just amazing things are happening here. The brain mapping project just blew my mind. And then there was the Agnikul space rockets, e-planes, drone taxis, and the first attempt to build an indigenous marine engine. Well done, Professor Kamakoti. IIT Madras, you need to tell us the recipe so it can be replicated in other parts of the country. And you'd be well aware that when you tweeted this, just a few hours before that, Priyanka Gandhi in Parliament had talked about Professor Kamakoti as being a Gaumutra expert and nothing more than that. And
first of all, I think it's entirely unfair for 2 reasons. First of all, the Gaumutra jibe is directed essentially at the Hindu community. It's a commonly used jibe, and I think it is absolutely unpardonable. But as far as the jibe being directed at Professor Kamakoti, that's completely ridiculous. I mean, he's one of our best scientists, and right now he's director of, as I have clearly stated, of the best intellectual hub in the country. And I use the word intellectual as opposed to something more limited as academic or something like that. And why do I say that? Because I think essentially what they are doing is the future of how education will be, not just in India, worldwide. This is exactly the kind of education hub that I was talking about earlier. What are they doing? They have created all these amazing startups and other projects right in the middle of the campus. Many of their best students are maybe doing some of the lectures and other things, but then they are surrounded by all these ideas, and all of them are getting, at least a sizable number of them are getting their hands dirty. This is what a university should be. Effectively, many of these are employing or taking on interns and other things from that campus. They're all getting their hands dirty. Meanwhile, they're taking their exams. And what is IIT meanwhile doing? It is actually allowing you to do a course online. So IIT Madras allows you to do many courses entirely online if you wish, and gives you IIT degree at the end of it as well. Because it sees that the real game is not actually the lectures that you listen to.
But the innovations you're
doing on the shop floor. the cutting edge expansion of knowledge that you are doing. And, it gives these degrees out. In fact, it probably thinks of this as a way of sourcing talent. If you can pass these tests and show us that you're good enough, please come here and be a part of our ecosystem. This is an attitude towards building up intellectual clusters that has to be built. And by the way, some of the top guys in the world also do it. MIT does it as well. Arizona State does it as well. Essentially, you can go and do all the Arizona State courses online if you wish, because they understand that the cutting edge of all of this is actually in the innovations you're doing, the hand you're getting dirty, and the whole clustering effect that you are getting. That is really the value.
Maybe you should advise your fellow economist Kaushik Basu to visit IIT Madras because he was here and in Delhi, and he says, I've been in Delhi for over 6 weeks. I've been analyzing India's economy. It's in a poor shape, with youth unemployment sky high, education in a mess, global confidence low, zero net FDI, pollution at record levels, with no action, and the only hope is the nation's youth that has realized this. So he has hope in the nation's youth, which realizes that everything is gone for
Look,
a
in a
toss.
country like India, you're saying it's a democracy, you'll get all kinds of protests. Some of it is good also. Some feedback loops are there. But to say that this government is entirely hopeless is ridiculous. They've just a few weeks before these protests, they had won major state elections. So when you do a formal election, they are able to win it. This is, after all, a democratically elected government. So I don't know where he comes from. I do wish he would try to fix all the amazing problems that are there in his country of residence and where his descendants are citizens.
Oh, okay. That's a sharp jibe. But he doesn't say that...
What is his skin in the game here? I live here. My kids are citizens of this country. You live here. So we have some stake here. I am willing to listen to, suggestions if he has specific ones. But if it is generally jibes, why should I care? Because in the end, what is his skin in the game? Nothing.
Okay. But you say that there is, what he talks about is a loss of complete hope.
Well, I don't know. I mean, he's a visiting tourist. He should... many tourists have different views of...
But there are many economists, including periodicals, who are
No. So there may be
analyzing-
people who maybe, if they give us specifically, if he has something to say, that this rule should be changed and should be made X, that should be done, we can have a look at it. Generic ranting, I'm sorry, why should we take that seriously at all? And by the way, the reason I ask for specific policies is that, you see, then you can begin to criticize those policies and their downsides. Supposing those policies don't work out, you can say that, you asked us to do this and look at what happened as a result. So it is important to ask for specific policies. Anybody can stand on a street corner and make random allegations. I can also go to his country of residence and make all manner of comments. So what? The point is, if you give a specific policy, we can have a conversation about it. We can pick it clean. And by the way, if it happens to be a good idea, we are happy to even implement it.
So there are many periodicals and, economy specific who are saying that the Indian government has bet extensively on public capex to spur private investment. Now, I want to ask you, you've also talked about it, that this is going to happen in the sense that if the government spends, it's going to, there will be the whole trickle-down effect, private investment will come in. Has that delivered?
Yes. And so here, let me actually disagree with many of them. India has a gross capital formation, gross domestic capital formation rate of about 32% of GDP. This happens to be a very high rate. It may not be Chinese levels, but if you exclude the Chinese, it is a pretty high rate of investment of pretty much any country in the world. Okay. In addition to that, let me also point out that India, the government part of that is only 4-5%. The rest of it is private sector anyway. Some of it gets classified as households, but that is because small companies, are in India classified as households. Plus, people are building homes and building other kinds of investments. To say that the private sector is not investing at all is ridiculous. There is significant investments happening. Look at the huge ports that are being built by for example, the Adanis, or you look at the big foreign investments that have come into semiconductors. These are not, minor.
But are they broad-based? If it's only Adani's, Ambani's, Tata's...
No, I'm just giving them because there are headline things. But at the same time, if you see the single biggest category of investment in the country is households. So if households are investing, then, those are small companies.
But you're not talking about large capital. Is there confidence?
No, so you better decide. Large capital, then I'll have to give you large names. Then you'll say, it's not trickling down.
No, what I mean to say is that large capital, yes, it's happening. But when large capital is happening, but it's not broad-based is what I'm saying. So
so that's the point I'm making to you. You have just contradicted yourself completely. I have just told you that a huge amount of this investment that happens in India happens under a category called households. You can look up the statistics on this. That is either, of course, households, but also small companies that are investing into improving some small enterprise that they may be doing at the ground level. Now, obviously, those are not going to be marquee names by definition. So when we discuss it, we will come up with marquee names. You'll say, but those are not big investments. Yes, when I talk about big investments, you'll say, they're only Adani, Ambani and Tatas. So I cannot, these small investments are unnamed by definition, but they are happening. And you will, if you go and look at the lending, you'll see a lot of the lending is happening to personal loans. Now, you will say all of it is consumption. It's not. A lot of it is investment.
So the investment that you're talking about, you're saying it's because of infrastructure that the government has...
Yes. For example, I build more infrastructure. The biggest beneficiaries of this, of public infrastructure, is actually small enterprise, not big enterprise. Because big enterprise can always create their own infrastructure if they have to, if it's really that big. But when you create public infrastructure that is generally available to everybody, then the biggest beneficiary of that is small industry or startups, etc., who are unable to create their own infrastructure. For example, the telecommunications revolution, right? Everybody can have a cell phone. Now, look at the number of small kinds of things that can happen. Look at the startups that have, some of them become big. A lot of them are local. But it can only be done because you have this public infrastructure.
One criticism also is that the GDP is growing, but mass consumption, which was on an upward trajectory, has now become weak. Is it because India's growth is unequal? What we had thought
Again,
it would be?
I cannot see how that is true.
That rural consumption, which was supposed to be our boom period, that's not happening.
Okay, so let me show you how all the things you said cannot be simultaneously true. Okay? Because the difference between your investment rate and your savings rate is your current account deficit. Okay? We have a current account deficit. Okay? So it must be the case that we are investing more than we are saving. Right? By definition. Now, if you're saying that our consumption is also slowing down, that means our savings rate is going up. Therefore, our current account deficit should disappear. But that is not happening. So what you're saying cannot possibly be true. It is not. I mean, the laws of economics would not even allow it. Either you are saying that if investment and consumption are slowing, we will end up with a current account surplus, whether we like it or not. It's an identity. So those who are making the case that everything is down.
Not everything is down.
So either investment is going up or consumption is going up.
Unequal is what is being said.
Okay, so that's a different debate. But you cannot argue that all of these things are simultaneously true if your current account deficit is not going into the positive. First of all.
Okay.
Secondly, well, we can have a debate about inequality, but to say that and we can see, but Shamika Ravi has done a huge study on this, looking at all the latest data available. And one of the things she makes is that consumption levels at the bottom deciles is where over the last decade there's been huge expansion. There is no doubt that the bottom deciles are able to consume a lot more than they ever have.
But it's premium consumption, right?
No, the
Which
bottom,
should-
but the bottom level is not doing premium consumption by
Okay.
definition. So
okay, so
how?
if premium consumption is doing well, but
No. So the
no,
point I'm
the
making
bottom
is the bottom is doing perfectly well. That's the
Okay.
point being made. That is precisely the point being made in Shamika's report, and that is based on a large-scale consumption surveys that were done. There is no better consumption survey that exists. So to say that there is no consumption at the bottom is actually factually incorrect.
Okay, let's get to economic reforms.
You see, there is a certain line of thought that everything in India is going wrong and the poor are getting poorer, richer getting richer. This debate, but all of this debate is done on Twitter without any hard evidence being presented or any policies being presented. This is precisely why I always say that there are only two ways of judging these kinds of criticisms. One, you either bring your data to the table and you have to have skin in the game.
It's not just on Twitter now. It's foreign media talking about
No,
it,
of course.
and periodicals. And
Yes, of
everybody.
course.
So,
Foreign media will say many things about this. And I have on many occasions written about how there is a entire framework of discussion on India which always sways in a particular way. And this is not new. When China was rising over, since the 90s, go back and look at how the discussions on China were. Okay? Forget China, it's at least a big place. Even Singapore. Okay, it's a very dictatorial place. It's too clean. Remember the discussion? It's too...
No chewing gum.
No chewing gum.
What is this freedom?
Yeah, what is this freedom? I mean, how many Singaporeans, how many Asians chew gum? It was a non-issue in Singapore. I lived there for 17 years. Nobody cared about this whole thing. And nobody in Singapore is claiming that it's too clean. And certainly in India, we would love it to be as clean as Singapore. So, at that time, in fact, quite interestingly, the Prime Minister, Lee Kuan Yew, the first Prime Minister of Singapore, he had somewhere in the 80s commented that we do allow foreign journalists and media into Singapore to report on what is going on here. But we do not want them to be a participant in what goes on here. They can report it, but without being a participant. And unfortunately, many of these debates very clearly show that there is a certain colonial view that foreign media has some role in civilizing us. And this is what my objection is. And I have repeatedly shown whether it's these indices run on democracy and freedom and so on. And some of them are just blatantly one-sided. And why are they one-sided? Well, I think to some extent, it's a passage that we have to go through to come of age in the sense that when you begin to emerge as a power, we should expect existing powers to behave in exactly this way. If we are not a threat to them in any way, then, that means we are not emerging. So far from looking on this as a problem, we should see it as, a passage we have to go through. After all, we were told for decades that all of China's numbers were wrong. Till it turned out that China, even if it was fudging along the way, there was no doubt that China emerged as a very serious power. And the fact is now, and in the manufacturing and exports world, it is by far the largest player in the scene.
So how do you counter it? Do you counter it by the Singaporean way of doing things or the Chinese way of doing things?
So one of it is you do counter it, like I have.
Or just ignore it?
Well, you cannot ignore it entirely.
Yeah.
Because what happens is that if you completely ignore it, then what happens is that one, it settles into the narrative. And then there is a price you pay for it. For example,
and it gets picked up by the LLMs, and it will become the narrative absolutely because of AI.
Yes, not just yes. So, for example, if you have a whole bunch of people like VDEM, Freedom House, etc., continuously telling you that India is not a democracy but something absurd called electoral autocracy, then what will happen? Your kids will one day Google up, is India a democracy? And they will be told by these LLMs that no, you don't live in a democracy. And so there is an important thing here that you do need to push back against these things. And this is one of the reasons I wrote a series of working papers, newspaper articles, and etc., debunking some of the ways and the methodologies that are used to do this narrative. However, you will not be able to do it entirely. And so one is that you have to keep pushing back against it. Two, I think one of the ways of doing it is to reverse the gaze. I think not enough people in India, not enough of our media intellectual class dissects events happening in other parts of the world. For example, you should go to the US, do podcasts with well-known intellectuals in America or in Britain. Go to Britain, go to London, and discuss. Why is it that they've had 7 prime ministers in 10 years? Interesting thing to discuss.
Democracy not working.
Democracy not working. We are very concerned about this situation sitting here in India about how democracy in the UK is breaking down. So I think there is an important role to be played by doing all of this, because this is one way of pulling out the hypocrisy.
But I did speak about this at this one event where I said that fantastic that, India and UK have a trade deal now. And this is despite your prime ministers changing ever so often and, continuity despite, political upheaval in your country.
But why is it continuity? It's not even clear it is. You should investigate it with grave concern.
It felt good to say that there is political instability in Britain as compared to India. But
you can do the same thing with America in multiple ways. So the point I'm making is that one of the problems is we Indians do not reverse the gaze. And we need to reverse the gaze and look at the rest of the world and how they are running the show. Similarly, when we listen to people, NRIs based in Boston and so on, when they are telling us about how things should be run, we should ask them which particular place did they approve of in all these years. Many of them are my fellow Bengalis. And all the problems that they are listing out are the most acute. Till this regime change recently, they were the most acute in Bengal. And yet, none of them have taken any great effort to try and improve things in their home state. Why not? After all, surely if they are so concerned about it, that is the one place that they should try to improve. In fact, I know for a fact that most of them rather improve of the rather derelict buildings of the in Kolkata, and think of this as some sort of some sort of beauty in poverty that they keep seeing. Why don't they do that?
Go close up into musty, moldy walls.
Yes, the poverty pond that one gets to see.
But would love the swanky airports. Used to be swanky airports in America. No longer. I just feel that Indian airports.
Yeah, so I mean that's the point. Efficient. The question is why don't you go to the US and interview people there about their airports or large parts of their urban systems full of in Philadelphia there are entire neighborhoods full of drug addicts lying on the streets and all those kinds of things. We could also do it. We don't do it.
We don't expend our energies.
No, we don't do it. Because, as I said, as a country that has only very newly become a major player, we don't have the confidence of doing it. Yeah. But the Chinese, you have to admit, their gumption. Yeah. They have the gumption to do it. And even when, in the 90s, they were not much better than where we are now, they had the gumption to do it. And the Singaporeans, they only became a truly developed country only in the late 80s. But already in the 70s, when they were just about coming out of the ready-made garments phase of their development, they were already beginning to mock. I
think Kishore Mehbubani is doing a good job in telling the Americans.
I think we need to be willing to do that. And this is the major problem with our intellectual class, that we are willing to listen to all this gyan from not only the West, but also our distant cousins who have gone off there and visit us over the winter vacation to lecture us about various things.
The Brown Sahibs have that. Okay, speaking about America, since we're talking so much about America, every economist worth his salt has said that unless we don't get the trade deal done with the US, our high economic growth that we have been having, we cannot sustain it any longer. So when is the trade deal going to happen and where is it?
So we have made a lot of progress, and I think both sides have made that point. But as I said, we will do it keeping our interests in mind. And if it requires a little massaging and further negotiation, we'll do that. Because once we lock it in, it will be there for a fairly longish period. So for that reason, it is important that we don't hurry into it. But yes, I mean, of course, trade deals are important in a world where multilateral systems have broken down. You will need to have these bilateral systems. And we have made progress. I mean, obviously, in recent years, we have done something with Australia. We've done something with the UK. We are making very good progress with the European Union. And also, by the way, with the US. I don't think we should rush into it. We do need to make sure that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. But it is true that, we do need to have good relations with the US, no doubt about it. And by the way, also, have good relations with other countries as well, which we are pursuing.
So when it comes to the trade deal, having a consensus, a political consensus is also important. If you remember during the nuclear deal, there came a time when the government almost fell, and Dr. Manmohan Singh expended a lot of personal capital in getting that a political consensus going. Now here you have a hot potato, because when it comes to dairy, when it comes to agriculture, you can have again a street movement, whether it's Punjab or
of course,
anywhere else.
I think agriculture is a tricky issue, and I can assure you that this government will make sure that agricultural interests of the interests of our agricultural community will be looked after.
Okay. And when it comes to tariffs, how is the government going to work with the US? Because Donald Trump's, in a couple of months, he's going to head towards midterms. So are we
we have had a very disrupted conversation on this through the last 1.5 years. It's not been necessarily directed at India. I mean, almost every other country in the world has faced some kind of a disruption in their trade relations with the US over tariffs or any other kind of thing. So in that sense, we are not unique. But it is the case that this repeatedly bringing this issue up causes a stop-go in the flow of goods and services, and also in the relationship. So I do think that at some point in time, the political leadership in the US will have to come to an understanding that they need a much more stable set of policies as far as the world is concerned, including India.
Okay, West Asia, there is still a problem. It doesn't seem to be ending, escalating too. And the impact on the Indian rupee, everybody has a take on it. Is it good, bad? Is it a shock absorber? Should we just let it adjust on its own? What should be done, or save it?
No, so I have been very clear on this, that when we decided to create a inflation targeting framework, then we clearly opted for monetary policy over exchange rate. Now, those of you who are economists and listening will know very well about something called the impossible trinity problem. The impossible trinity problem is the following, that once you have open capital accounts, you can either have domestic monetary policy or you can control the exchange rate. You can't do both. So, for example, if you have a country like Hong Kong, which has decided to fix its exchange rate to the US, it does not have an independent monetary policy.
Okay.
Whatever the US monetary policy is, translates through to the monetary policy of Hong Kong. Now, we have actually opted the other way, which is the right thing to do for a large, internally oriented country, which is to target our inflation, and consequently, we should do our monetary policy to target inflation, which means that we have actually given up on our exchange rate. Now, that doesn't mean we don't intervene at all. It just means that we allow the exchange rate to adjust to the market-driven level. We can use the reserves to soften the direction in which it goes, but no more. So I don't think we should be interfering in allowing the rupee to find its own level, because the inflation targeting system has actually worked very well. You will remember that inflation in India used to run in the 8 to 12% range. Today, inflation has been in the 2 to 6% range for the last decade, okay, which is an exceptional, because we have brought down, so controlling inflation has done well. If we are able to control inflation, as we have demonstrated, the exchange rate in the long run will adjust for it. So, for example, if we control inflation at a decent level and the exchange rate weakens, well, many other countries in the world have exchange rates that move around quite a lot. I mean, the Japanese, for example, have had strong exchange rate, weak exchange rate, going back to strong exchange rate. It does not deeply matter to them, except that when it is weak, it's good for exporters. When it is strong, it's not so good for exporters. So in the case of India, if, for example, the exchange rate has weakened a little bit and we are holding our line on inflation, then our exporters have gained some space. Why is that a problem?
Okay, but at what point does depreciation become a net negative for?
At no point if our inflation is not affected.
Okay.
That is the point being made. And I think Shamika once said 100 is just a number and she was slammed on
trolled,
it.
Yes.
But this is where the thinking comes from.
But Panagrege also has said that.
Yes. So I'm telling you where the thinking comes from. Unfortunately, everybody gets excited about this 100 number. But let me tell you what the thinking is. The laws of economics do not allow you to control monetary policy and the exchange rate at the same time. When we 10 years ago opted for inflation targeting, we basically said we are going to use monetary policy directly to control inflation, which means by definition that we gave up on the exchange rate. Okay. Now, in the long run, purchasing power parity begins to play. So supposing I'm controlling inflation, therefore each rupee buys a certain basket of goods, 100 rupees buys a certain basket of goods, and I have managed to more or less maintain the value of the rupee vis-a-vis that basket of goods. Then let us say the rupee depreciates. But the rupee is still buying, roughly speaking, the same basket of goods. What you have effectively done is bought yourself export competitiveness. And that is basically what has happened. We are now very much more competitive from an exporting perspective than before. If inflation spikes up, we will increase interest rates. So, that is protecting the rupee is not the way to do it.
So I'm going to ask a very simplistic question. If the economy is doing well, then why doesn't the rupee do well?
Because they are not necessarily directly related. So let me explain this to you. The Japanese had a very weak yen till the Plaza Accord.
When was that?
This was in the 1984 or 85.
Okay.
There were the boom years of Japan through the 1960s, 70s, and through most of the 80s. The Americans actually asked them, as per the Plaza Accord, to appreciate their currency, which they did through the late 80s into the 90s. Okay. The exchange rate of the yen at some point went all the way from somewhere in the 250 range to 80 to the dollar. Now, by the logic of exchange rate strength, you would have thought that would be fantastically good for the Japanese. In fact, not. The Japanese economy has not grown for 30 years as a result of this exchange rate movement. I mean, among other things, there's demographics and other things as well. But certainly the exchange rate played a very important role in this. Let me flip it the other way around. During the same time that the Japanese were dramatically appreciating their currency, who depreciated their currency? It was China. Go back to the 90s. The Chinese dramatically depreciated their currency. But this is the key part here. They held inflation. Okay. If your exchange rate goes down to half, but you doubled inflation, then there's no benefit to you, right? You just used it all up.
Are we replicating the Chinese model?
Well, what we are doing is allowing the exchange. The effect may be the same. We are not doing it the way the Chinese did it. Of course, they depreciated their currency deliberately. In the Indian case, it is organically depreciating. As long as we control inflation, it is fine. What is the problem?
Okay. What has China done as far as manufacturing is concerned, which India can also do?
Well, there are a large number of things that we need to do, and I spend a lot of my time doing, but ease of doing business is an important part of this. And in this context, a large number of the problems now are different from the ones that existed a decade ago. So a decade ago, if you had asked, we had come here and had this discussion a decade ago, and I said, okay, what are the big things that we need to do? Well, a decade ago, here are the things you would have told me. You would have told me that the infrastructure sucks, we really need to do something about it. You told me we don't have an internal market. Okay, every state has a market on its own. Look at the number of large trucks stuck at every state border. How can you leverage India's internal market if there is no internal market? You would have told me that the banking system is basically bust, not lending. We can have a crisis on this and the twin balance sheet problem. You would have told me the corporate profitability is a very, very serious problem. That's again another part of the twin balance sheet problem. These are the issues you would have raised.
Which
now, a decade later, let me show you what has happened to each one of them. Even the worst critics will agree that infrastructure is now radically better than what it was below. Intra-city infrastructure still needs to be boosted, but intercity infrastructure is radically better. Our highways are better, our airports are better, even our ports are better. Okay, so that one significantly improved. Even electricity supply, telecommunications, all of these are radically better than what they were a decade ago. Similarly, using GST, we have created an internal market. Right? We didn't exist before. Third, the banks were cleaned up. Yeah. It required the bankrupting of some of India's largest companies.
In fact, that's not talked about as much as it should be. That we didn't let our banks go under.
Absolutely. In fact, some of the bizarre things are people who don't understand what happened actually criticize the insolvency and bankruptcy court and say, there were write-offs. That is the wrong way to think about it in the first place. They were not written off in the sense that now nobody owes anything else. Companies were taken, they were liquidated. Very large. If you go back and look at the list of dirty dozen companies of that time, 12 very large defaulters were liquidated. Then the next 38 of the top 50 where something happened, either they paid back the money or they were also. As a result of which a rush of money came back into the banking system. This is incidentally something I was personally involved in when I was the principal economic advisor. And because our banking system had this rush of liquidity coming back in 2019, we got it not a minute too soon. If we had the banking system of 2015-16 going into the COVID crisis, let me tell you, we would have had a massive banking heart attack. But we didn't. Our banking system actually came out of the COVID period healthier than it went in. And then, of course, the entire NBFC cleanups that happened. So, I've now given you a whole list of the things
corporate profitability.
And then corporate profitability, okay, you know, corporates are a lot more profitable than they used to be. And in 23, 24, even into much of 25, they raised a huge amount of capital. So all of them are, at least a large number of them are massively cash rich right now. So I think there is a big difference on where we were a decade ago and here. Much healthier systems. Even with all these shocks that are happening. COVID, of course, was an unprecedented shock. People have forgotten it wasn't so long ago. Then we have had the oil price shock from the Ukraine-Russia conflict. We then had the tariff issues. We had now, still ongoing, the Iran war oil price shock. Imagine all of these things happening within a 5-year period. And whatever it's worth, our economy is still growing at 7.8%. The latest numbers that we have. And it is not a theoretical thing. You just go around and look at the kinds of new innovations that are happening. I mean, of course, I talked about IIT Madras and extraordinary things that are happening. But, even in daily life, there is actually, all kinds of things that are happening, whether it's Zomato or Blinkit or the Uber taxis and
quick commerce,
There's quick commerce is just one of these things. There are many other areas where things are happening. Meanwhile, other kinds of infrastructure are also getting improved. I mean, the old railway dabbas are getting replaced with Vande Bharat. You are beginning to see the railway stations, many parts of the country are now beginning to look more like the airports. You're going to see, New Delhi railway station is going to be massively upgraded. So these are not theoretical things. You can go and touch and feel the things that we are talking about.
I'm going to bring up a question. This is straight out of, all the Instagram reels that are coming out. And it's the conversation on the street. And I want you to explain to me, because some of the reels and the sound bites which are coming out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter is that we pay income tax on our salaries, capital gains tax on investments, GST on products, toll taxes on travel, and yet India is overtaxed. Is it normal for a developing economy?
So I can sympathize with people having to pay tax because you and
Very
I
few
also.
of us are doing it.
So I mean, I pay taxes, and so of course, But I would also at the same time ask, okay, let's lower the tax rates, which I'm always in favor of as a taxpayer. But then tell us what exactly is it that you want me to cut back on. You can't ask me to be running eternally large deficits because this is an arithmetic problem. So either you tell me I cut back on spending on some things. Now you'll say, these are XYZ welfare schemes that you should cut back on, or you can call them populist. Okay, fair enough. But do remember, we are a democracy. And so if a government has come to power and has promised a certain things, then we have to accept that in the logic of democracy, this is what the people want. And so if that is what the people want to be spent, then that is indeed what the political system will
Whether people
deliver.
want it or not, a lot of talk is that this is being the direct benefit transfer, where money is being given to people in exchange for votes. And that is
if we're
the
in a
reason.
democracy, that is what the people want. We can have a debate about whether it's wasteful or not. But if people of a country vote for something and it is a functioning democracy, then you have to accept that this is indeed what the democratic system has asked for. And the political class cannot really be blamed in that sense that they are delivering what they were elected to do. Now, it is then incumbent on the intellectual class of the country to point out what, if assuming that particular spending is wasteful, I mean, not always is, but let's assume it is, then it is incumbent on the intellectual class of that particular population to state that, and make their case. And if they are successful in making the case, then some other thing should be done.
Okay.
And it needn't be a negative way, say they shut this down, but you can make the case that something else is better. And, then the resources will shift to that. And that is why the intellectual class of any society has a disproportionate responsibility to make the case that something else should be done and not to fall for every passing fad that comes by.
Another conversation which economists are having, the political class is also having, and many countries are having, is about large populations. Are they an economic advantage or not? I had Shamika on the podcast who also said that everybody's rethinking on this now, that encouraging higher birth rates, is it the right way to go?
So it's not about large or small populations. Obviously, it depends on, Luxembourg, depends on resources, depends on also, very importantly, and the demographic question is about the shape of the curve of how the demography looks. So what is happening and has happened is that worldwide, the birth rates have crashed. So much of the debate till very recently was, oh my God, populations around the world are going to spiral up. There'll be a population explosion. And of course, large population countries like India were pointed to, and
you eat too much food.
Or whatever it may be the case.
Yes, that was said. That India consumes a lot of food.
As Churchill certainly made the point that we breed like rabbits. And something should be done about us. The fact of the matter is that birth rates, even in India, have dramatically come down. So and this is not today's news. The peak number of babies born in India happened 25 years ago. 29 million babies were born in the year 2001. Last year, the number of babies born was 22.5. So you can imagine from 29 to 22.5, dramatic decline, a drop. So when in the Indian context somebody says boomers, the Indian boomer is about 25 years old. Now, that now brings our birth rates to levels, the fertility now to levels which are below replacement rate. The only reason our population is now growing is because we are also living longer. So while the inflow of population has slowed down very significantly, the outflow is also slowing down because people are living longer. But of course, we are not all going to live forever. So at some point, people will begin to dying out. And so somewhere in the 2050s or thereabouts, our population too will begin to shrink. And then we will also at some point begin to age. This is what China is going through now. So just to give you some perspective on how rapidly these things happen, China, which is population till very recently was in fact larger than ours. Last year, it only had 8.5 million births. Okay, 22.5 million births in India. Their number of births was 8.5. And it is likely to, by all indications, is going to spiral downwards from here, somewhere in the range of 7 million in the next decade or so. So this is a catastrophic reduction in population. And this level of births implies that China's population will shrink by about 100 million per decade for the rest of the decade. It is not a trivial, it is almost a catastrophic kind of decline in population.
Despite that one-child policy being scrapped, in spite of
yes,
that.
because the societal structure has by now changed. You see, what has happened is that you now have two generations who have basically grown up without siblings. And so the structure of that society has fundamentally changed. You now have a person who's not grown up with siblings, may not even have cousins. Now, for that person to marry is very different, because living with another person has already changed. The social structure has changed. Most of your friends don't have siblings. So even if they do, first of all, not many are getting married, but even if they do get married, they also again then have one, maybe two children. But it's too late now, because the whole thing
even
is now...
incentivization like what Korea is doing is not working.
No, it has not worked in any society. No society in the world where birth rates have significantly fallen below the replacement rate has been able to bring back its birth rate back to a replacement rate. The Nordics, who probably have put in the greatest amount of effort into this, managed to stabilize it at a very low level. It's not falling anymore. But it is, even there, it is not replacement rate. The Singaporeans have tried all manner of things. It has not managed to do it. The Koreans, of course, have a very difficult problem. So, their total fertility rate required to keep a population stable for a developed country is about 2.1. Their total fertility rate is now at 0.7, which is 1/3 of the required rate. Now, if you keep that going for any length of time, you will reach a position where you will essentially have to begin to shut down your universities. Schools are already shutting down, but you will literally, you will not have enough people to switch off the lights.
Yeah.
This is something that China will face in the not too distant future, because 100 million people disappearing per decade is a non-trivial situation.
Yeah.
And when you face those kinds of declines in population, which will happen to China in the 2050s, 2060s, 2070s, whole cities will have to just be emptied out and people transferred to other cities to just keep them populated. Because once the population falls below a certain threshold, having robots doesn't solve the problem. After all, what are those robots working for?
Yeah.
But
like Europe had immigrants coming in to run their institutions and their healthcare, their education, everything. They opened that up. Will China do that?
The question is, maybe China will do that, but do remember first.
Is Japan doing that?
Japan has done it to some extent and then stopped, because they came to the conclusion that it was a better thing to limit. It's not like it's zero, but they do have limited migration.
They don't want demography.
They don't want demographic change, because their thing is that we'd rather be culturally sustainable, even in decline, rather than try to keep up appearances while seeing cultural dilution. It's a choice that society has taken.
And what does India do?
Well, we don't have that problem yet.
But we have.
But we will, and also do remember, we will one day maybe have it. But right now, our problem is that our population is already beginning to reach. We are now entering into the sort of the demographic dividend phase, where a bulk of our population will be of working age, and we will be here for 25, 30 years, about 30 years. This is a good phase for us, where our problem will be job creation, not this problem of shrinking population. But we do need to remember that this problem will come to us as well.
We'll have more aging population.
We will also have aging population, and some parts of the country are already there.
Already there, yes.
Okay, so while on the whole, this overall number looks okay, but that's happening because of UP, Bihar, etc. But there are parts of the country like Kerala, like Andhra Pradesh, interestingly, Bengal, where birth rates are very far below the replacement rate. In these states, they will have to accept migrants from other parts of the country in order to keep just the system going. Now, there will consequently be conversations about cultural continuity and so on.
I've seen it in Karnataka, I've seen it in Kerala. I had seen it in Maharashtra, which we had seen in Bombay and all, right? In Mumbai, where, the restaurant staff and your auto and taxi drivers. So the past 20, 30 years were people from Bihar. Your cooks and cleaners and all were from UP, Bihar. But now I'm seeing that happening in Kerala restaurants.
As I said, you cannot
also,
have very low birth rates.
And Tamil Nadu, factory workers.
You cannot have very low birth rates and send off a large proportion of your population to say work in the Gulf, and then say the systems have to be kept running at the same time.
Yeah.
Who's going to keep those systems running? So you have to either shut those systems down and accept a lower level of functioning, which is what Japan is doing. They said, okay, we will age but remain culturally pure.
Yeah.
So in which case, that is one option. The other option is that you allow for migrants to come in and do that. In that case, acculturization is part of the issue.
Language,
everything. All these things have to be, which is what Europe is now dealing with. These are very tricky things to do.
Yeah.
Europe,
I don't know. I mean, in our country, because of our multiple language issues, sensitivities regarding culture, these things happen where we will have to, our societies will have to become less inward looking.
So our societies, interestingly, have over we have for thousands of years dealt with this and have survived it. I would say the problems are going to be in a different level altogether in Europe. For example, they have very generous welfare states. Now, the indigenous population is going to become old. They're going to replace them with younger people from other countries. Now, it's one thing to pay high taxes for your own grandfather. It's quite interesting what will happen when you have a population that has to pay taxes for somebody else's grandfather. Now, that becomes even more complicated when those people become citizens and acquire voting rights.
Yes.
Will they vote to keep generous old age pensions running?
Childcare.
Well, childcare they may. Young people who are now coming from another society becomes a society may still vote for childcare because it is their children.
No,
but will they pay for somebody else's granddad's old age pension?
Old age pension.
So these are the kinds of
even
things.
America is waking up to that.
So these are complications they will have. And by the way, for all the cribbing people do about Indian systems, remember we are much less indebted. Our economy is still growing very rapidly, and we still have certain level of social capital to deal with some of these issues. Okay. Like what do you do? Looking after parents and so on.
Yeah.
Now, what will happen in societies where the indigenous population is distinct and aging? Bring in a young population to work, which has no sympathy for the older population. And you have already an extremely indebted system. If you try to tax these younger people too much, they will either, if the talented ones will get off and go off to another place, after all, they are anyway not rooted to that place. And all you will be left with will be the people who are not going to be taxed because they are below the tax horizon. And in fact, some of them will be refugees who you have to pay for, in addition to them not paying taxes.
Will they become migrants? Will they become expats? What do you call them then?
So this is much, much more tricky. And Europe is going to discover this is going to be the driving force of European politics into the next couple of decades at the very least. And we'll see how that works out for them. But and I hope that Indian intellectuals, media, etc., will go to Europe and have conversations about the problems that the Europeans are facing. We are very concerned about this here in India.
Okay, got it. Got that. Let's now get off this and talk about some fun things. Tell me about now, when are you sailing next? Where are you sailing next? What is the plan?
Well, the voyage to Muscat worked out well. It took us 18 days and 17 nights, basically, to get from Porbandar to Muscat. And it was quite an exciting thing. We had all kinds of weather, all kinds of experiences. But the ship worked out very, very well. It just proved that ancient Indian technology of stitching together planks is workable to a real maritime capability that I think we don't give enough credit to.
I want to know about the bathroom thing, please. I know it's ghastly to talk about.
Yes, it's basically two baskets that are strung on the side, off the side of the ship. And essentially you have to jump off the ship into the basket, use the facility, and
There's
then
no facility, just the water.
well, there is a hole in the basket, and then basically you have to climb back in. You basically have to heave yourself over the side back into the ship. And do remember, all of this is happening while the ship is going back and forth. It's heavy seas. There are waves splashing against the side of the ship. You might be getting wet while you're doing all of this. It may be dark because you have to obviously go to toilet in at night as well.
You didn't shave all through, right?
No, that's a wastage of fresh water. Do remember that there's only so much fresh water you take with you. Okay. So
your skin had become all swarthy, and it was
of course
all
because you're out in the sun all day, and it's not just from the sun from above. It's also bouncing off the waves and the water, so you're getting the reflection. So all your skin gets completely burnt as a result of that.
What did you eat?
So you do remember that
Cans.
So you have to remember firstly that other than the communications and navigation, there's nothing modern on the ship except a stove for cooking. So we didn't attempt to use wood for cooking. We did carry a gas stove, but there is no refrigeration.
Okay.
So which means that after 5 days, you do not have fresh vegetables and fruits and things like that. For the first 5 days, we ate that. But then what happens is that after 5 days, you have to go purely onto dry rations, which means that you have very limited number of things you can eat, because this basically stuff that doesn't go bad. You have thepla with achar, which is Gujarati, and incidentally, probably developed in ancient times for precisely this reason.
Salty?
It's like a roti. It's a little bit of a salty
I get that,
roti.
but why was it? Why do you say it was developed?
Because many of these voyages were done by Gujaratis, and this was a thepla is a Gujarati dish, so it's very likely that that's what they developed for precisely these kinds of voyages.
Even now, people who travel
carry thepla.
They carry thepla.
So
with
thepla is one, and then but the most of what we ate was actually khichdi.
Okay.
Because it's simple to do. You put some khichdi, you put some dal and some rice, and some spices. The onions last longer than the other vegetables.
You tweeted and everybody got very worried with the food is over. I mean, your mother must have got very worried also.
No. She was. That was the India Today for some reason put up bizarre food over, and that was bizarre because I had explained clearly in my tweet that the fresh vegetables will finish in 5 days. That is exactly what you should expect to happen. We were prepared for this. So the food after that was basically khichdi, so which is dal chawal with this thing, and then you can have some papad if you want.
And this, obviously you're wearing this attire. That means that you had rough seas.
You get rough seas.
And then
it rains.
You roll over and how do you tie yourself up?
No, you don't tie yourself up. That's a bad idea. The ship rolls all the time.
Okay.
In bad weather, it rolls quite a lot. It also pitches, which for front back is pitch, sideways is rolling, and the ship is doing this continuously day in and day out. Now in rough weather, obviously it does more of that, but that doesn't mean that you can stop sailing the sea. You have to be out there on the deck. Sails are being taken up, adjusted, brought down depending on what you want to do. And so you cannot and by the way, there are no cabins. There is a hold downstairs, which is also quite damp and not very pleasant. So your best thing to do is to wear those waterproofs and be on the deck. And yes, you get wet, but that's part of the thing. In fact, that's the closest thing you have to a bath anyway. So it's not so bad.
Did you get scared at any point of time for your life?
No, I had trained quite heavily. The entire team had trained for many months before this. So when we went on this voyage, we were we were mentally very much, clear what we were doing.
Okay, explain this now, these two symbols. What do they mean?
So there are two symbols. The first one is a Gandhaberunda. This two-headed mythical bird.
From my state.
From your state. It used to be a royal symbol across many parts of the country, including for the Kadambas. It was also for some of the dynasties of the Vijayanagar Empire and so on. And I believe it survives now as the state symbol of Karnataka.
Yes.
So the Gandhaberunda was therefore put in there because it's a symbol of ancient maritime empires. The other is a more common symbol, Surya.
Yeah.
So that is there. There are other Indian things as well. For example, if you look right in the front, there is an eye. That is there in many ancient ships. It was common to put the eye. By the way, if you go to coastal...
I thought it's a shank.
No, it's an eye.
Eye, okay.
Yes, it's there on both sides.
Okay.
And if you look at fishing vessels even today along the coast, both coasts, you will see this eye. It's a very common motif in Indian...
to say that we are awake, watching?
The ship is sort of given a life of its own, I suppose. So,
Okay.
so it's a way of creating. So there is an eye on either side. So it gives it a look of that it has its own eye. So there are many other elements which are very Indian in there.
Okay. How many hours of sleep do you get when you're
So
in this situation?
that's obviously partly depends on the weather. So if it's rolling around and you're on the deck and doing work and all that, you don't get much sleep. But it's not like you are doing the usual 8 hours of sleep at night and then the day. So the whole system works on a 4-hour shift system. So during your shift, you're obviously supposed to be awake. And when you're off, then you can sleep if there is no work. But if, for example, the sail has to be put up, then it's all hands on the deck. So, or if there's something to be done. And then there are meals when you're... So it doesn't work in the usual... it's not like 8 hours of work, 8 hours of sleep, and 8 hours you do your own thing. It works on this 4-hour shift cycle, which is obviously, and then depending on whether sales are to be increased or decreased, or some work has to be done or something, then of course that...
Of course, everybody wants to know. I mean, you've been asked this before, like why? I mean, you're an economist, you're a historian, you are an author, you wear so many hats, and then you'll do martial arts also, and you do this sailing part also. How do you balance everything in your life?
So, I mean, I
love asking this question because usually these are questions asked of a woman. How do you balance home life with work life? So I like asking this of a man.
So, the first thing is that they are not in very clean compartments in my head.
Okay.
Okay. One of the things that I have said very often is that in the end, I'm not attempting to just rebuild an economy. I'm trying to rebuild a civilization. So this is a part of the wider agenda of mine, is that Indians need to understand themselves first when they are attempting to do any of these things, whether they are trying to fix the education system or they are trying to build the economy or any other endeavor. The first thing we need to do is to have a sense of ourselves. And that requires that we understand our history properly. Unfortunately, the way our history is told to us is even today done in a way that only a colonial power would think of us. So because of this, we only understand our history as a sequence of invasions in which we Indians somehow survived it in some way by basically, accepting their whatever was given to us in a very meek way. Occasionally, a few people may stand up to it, but by and large, it was about, we somehow survived it stoically and accepted all the good civilizational things that were given to us.
We learn history from the battles we lost.
Exactly. Now, I have no problem in learning about battles we lost, but we must have won some battles.
That it's the only battles.
Yes, after all, we are still around as a civilization.
Yeah, there must be a reason.
But you see, you will be taught about the battles of Panipat, but you will be taught nothing about the 1971 war which we won, just as an example. So this is a very important, in my view, is to begin to change our idea of history and give and to understand that we Indians had agency, right? We built our own history. And one place where this really strikes out is in our maritime history. We went out, we explored the Indian Ocean, we went all the way through to, not just Vietnam and Cambodia and Indonesia, but all the way through Japan and Korea and on the other side trading with the Romans and so on. So when there, it is much more difficult to simply, sweep this history under the carpet. I mean, the world's largest Hindu temple is not in India. It's in Cambodia.
Yeah.
There is a whole country called Indonesia, which has named itself after us. They, in fact, have a currency, rupiah. In fact, they have the correct pronunciation. We don't. Singapore.
Simhapura.
So, so you can clearly see that we were, a country with agency. Our ancestors were sailing the oceans. They had a sense of adventure and exploration. And so I think the way to redefine ourselves, the easier pathway to it is simply to do it from the maritime view. And to that extent, about a decade ago, I wrote a book called The Ocean of Churn. You will remember that.
Yeah.
That became quite a bestseller. And so along the way, I decided that one thing is to write about it. Why not physically demonstrate this? So what better way to physically demonstrate it than to build a ship from, from the 4th century and do it the way they did it. I stitch it together using the technologies of that time and go out there and show that these ships were seaworthy. And so I got on, I got on it myself. And
You've done West Asia. Will you be doing East Asia too?
So there is now there was a plan to do this, and it really depends on the Navy rather than me, because they, they'll have to see whether they can spare the mind space given all the events now in West Asia. Do remember that the crew are people who have other jobs, i.e. they are trained submariners and missile experts and so on. So one has to see whether they can be spared for another voyage.
Is it a different type of shipping vessel that will be doing the East
No,
Asia?
we will do it with INSV Kaundinya, the same ship. Because we have, building one and then learning how to sail it are hard. And we have already done that for this one. So the question is, do we use, I think our predisposition would be to do it with this ship because we took the trouble of building it.
And what would be your favorite?
And learning how to sail it.
What would be the route that you want to take?
So there was a very famous route from Kalinga, or what is now Odisha, called the Bali Yatra, which was the voyage to Bali. Which was typically done in Kartik Purnima in November. I mean, when the sailors set out, and they would take a couple of months at least to cross to Bali. So it's a very long voyage, much longer than the one I did to Muscat. So it's a different level of difficulty. That's why, as I said, since it will take at least a couple of months to
train for it and everything.
One to train for it, but that may be even lesser problem because now we know how to sail the ship. We weren't 100% sure when we set off to Oman, but now we are quite confident. But do remember, we have to spare these people. The Navy has to pay attention and keep track of them. It's not like you set the fellows off and they go off. And in this particular voyage, we will have to figure out how to resupply them along the way. I mean, 2 months of eating khichdi would drive anybody mad. And also remember that the ancients had the advantage that they organically built up the knowledge base of where the currents are, the winds are. We are inventing this. Now, it's okay in a voyage which is relatively short from Gujarat to Oman. But when you are doing this very long journey, and on a very experimental ship and on experimental routes, it is quite possible that we will end up taking a lot longer than what the ancients used to take because we have not done those routes. We don't know the nuances of it. So given all those pieces, the Navy will at some point have to take a call whether they can provide the mind space to do this voyage.
It'll be fun to watch.
It will be fun to do it.
And fun to do it. I don't know. I mean,
but I don't think I will be able to take 2 months off.
2 months off.
But it was a privilege to be on
I'm sure.
To be on the maiden voyage. It was definitely a privilege.
So finally, the question which everybody wants to know: are you going to be joining the BJP? Because there were lots of rumors during the Bengal election that you're going to be fighting in the election. Then there was that, he'll go the Rajya Sabha route. Then there was that, he's going to become the finance minister of Bengal. He's going to become the education minister. So now what all
So I don't
are you
know.
going to do?
I mean, frankly, those who have such expectations of me should try and should.
Because you look like a man who likes challenges, which is why I feel that
Yeah, but I
there
mean,
must be
I
some
seem to be having a lot more fun. Why are you? Why are you making me
straitjacketing you?
straitjacketing me?
Okay. But it's interesting to see which way your life moves in the next couple of months. But all the best, Sanjeev, and thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching or listening to this edition of the NR podcast with Smita Prakash. Do like or subscribe on whichever channel you've seen this or heard this. Namaste, Jai Hind. This episode is powered by Delta Exchange, India's leading crypto exchange. Click here to watch the previous episodes.